Hey everyone, welcome to It Tastes Different Gaming Appetizers. And what's on this episode? PlayStation 5's going up in price everywhere but the US. Before we get started on this video, make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell notification to stay up to date with new videos that we do all the time. But let's get into it. So Sony Interactive Entertainment has revealed that they've raised the price of the PlayStation 5 console for both the digital disc drive editions and both the digital and disc drive editions in multiple markets around the world. So they say that the global economic environment is a challenge that many of you around the world are no doubt experiencing. And basically, we're seeing high global inflation rates as well as adverse currency trends impacting customers and creating pressure on many industries. So based on these challenges, economic conditions, they've made the difficult decision to up the recommended retail price of the PlayStation 5 in select markets across Europe, the Middle East, Africa, Asia Pacific, Latin America, as well as Canada. There is no price increase in the United States. So Europe, UK, Japan, China, Australia, Mexico, and Canada, it went up in price. Now, it looks like it only went up about $50, equating to your currency in your state, in your country, but about $50. If it were to go up in the US, it'd be about a $50 increase in price for both editions. So you're looking at, if it were to go up in the US, let's say you're looking at $550 for the disc drive version and $450 for the discless version. So we'll start with that because Microsoft and Nintendo have come out saying what they would do or what their plans are. But let's first talk about PlayStation going up in price. Pat, what do you think about PlayStation increasing their prices and talking about how inflation was the problem?
I mean, inflation is pretty bad this year, but they basically said, here, have a 10% price increase to everybody outside in these few markets, because that's basically what it equates to. 10% is what they look like they raised it around in all the markets where they raised the price. Yeah, it's somewhat a little confounding to me, right? They're now working with 2-year-old technology. They're talking about inflation and stuff, but in my opinion, the hardware that they are using, because they're not putting new hardware in these, they're not doing any hardware changes or anything like that. This hardware technology should have gotten cheaper to make over the course of the last 2 years, which is typically what happens with technology. Technology price goes down because they can make it more efficiently, make it cheaper, and things like that. We still have the whole chip shortage and thing going on in certain markets and stuff like that. That's still a major factor out there. But I don't. 9%. I mean, I can't remember what the inflation rate around here was. It was like 9% a few months back or something. So I haven't looked at it recently, but I would say, I guess they're going to blame that on that because they're having to pay people more. They're having to do everything like that to get people to stick around and things like that. But, old Mark Zuckerberg and them have set the bar with their Oculus Quest 2 by raising the price of super old technology. And now I guess Sony thinks, hey, they tested the waters. They didn't get too much backlash. We're going to do it too. It's a hard pill to swallow, and it's a sign of the times. I mean, I think it's going to become more prevalent. Companies are going to start seeing that they can do this when I guarantee you the amount of money they're making on PlayStations has done nothing but increase over the last 2 years. They're probably not making less money than they were making at launch on the PlayStation. It's just at this time, Sony is getting a little bit greedy. They're feeling a little bit of sting of not being able to keep up in certain markets and things like that. So they're like, we're going to raise our rate so we can stay relevant or stay up to what we need to in revenue for these areas. Microsoft and Nintendo said they're not going to, which if Nintendo raised their rates, I'd be like, you guys are idiots because your technology is end of life, in my opinion. The OLED is about the only thing that's more current, but in my opinion, the technology inside the Switch is end of life. They need to be looking to create new hardware, new versions, and things like that. And Xbox, We heard rumors about Microsoft paying off some manufacturers to front load their stuff so they get first pick of everything. So they're probably got price set for who knows how long. They're probably price set on what they're buying components for the next 2 to 5 years with this deal, because they probably paid up front. So they're making out with that deal. Sony will probably start doing that as well, because it's a smart move. If you can say, hey, I plan on selling 30 million units or 50 million units or 100 million units in the next couple of years, I want to purchase all of those now. The company's going to say, but and they expect delivery over the course of the next 6, 7, years or whatever. So they're probably a little bit insulated from something like what Sony's going through. But I do not think that it is hurting Sony as bad as they say it is, but whatever. They're raising their price, and what can you do? If you want one, you pay the price. Unfortunately, there's too many people out there that are paying scalpers for prices, so they're already used to paying the high exorbitant prices. But those people that held out, like us, until you can get one at retail, they're still hard to find, both of them. The X and the PS5 are still hard to find. The X is more easily obtainable than the PlayStation is by far. But now you're going to end up paying up 10% more, where if it's a place that your market went up in. I wonder if that's going to be more of, if you're going to see a lot more people trying to purchase outside of their markets. Their consoles they're not necessarily region locked anymore, I don't think. So technically, if you can get one from the US in your own country, the only thing I'm not certain about is, I don't look into this too much anymore, is the power supply compatibility. Are the PSUs cross compatible? You just get a different cord, and because the voltages vary depending on what country you're in. You got a 120 volt here, and you got different voltages in other countries. So it's it'd probably be something that may happen, where people are trying to buy stuff and then ship them across borders. But a 10% increase, I don't think it's going to be worth it to ship stuff from like the US to those countries. But like Canada and Mexico, which border us, that's just a hop, skip, and a jump across the border if you can get in there and get one. So both of them saw 10% increases on their markets. What do you think, Nick? Do you think this is Sony really is hurting and needs to increase 10%, or do you just think they're getting a little bit greedy?
I think they're just getting greedy. Sony, I'm sure, has been doing just fine, right? And I think you're absolutely right that they saw Oculus do it and not get much. There was backlash, but not a lot. And so we talked about it before when we talked about Oculus going up. These other developers such as Sony or Microsoft following suit with that. And here we have Microsoft following suit, or Sony, following suit with that. I'm surprised that they didn't do it in the US. I'm wondering if they didn't do it in the US because they figured that there would be a lot of backlash for that. That they would get a lot of backlash from people in the US if they ever increase the price. That's the only thing I can think of. But I feel like this might hurt them a bit outside the market, right? Because if someone goes into the store and there is a PlayStation 5 and an Xbox Series X and it's $50 cheaper, they might just be like, you know what? I'd rather just, it is only $50, granted, but they might be like, you know what? I'd rather save a little bit of that cash and go for the X. I'm not sure we'd have to see how things come out in the future. The Xbox and like you say, the Xbox and Nintendo did say they don't have any plans to increase the price of their consoles, which I think is a smart idea, especially for Nintendo, but especially for Microsoft. This could help them as far as getting more dominance in the console space. But yeah, I don't think Sony's hurting. They just saw, I feel like they just saw an opportunity and went for it, right? Sony makes more than just the game consoles. They're much like Microsoft. They're a multi-billion-dollar company. They make a ton of stuff and the money can come in from a variety of reasons. I don't think that 10% increase is really going to help them much in their finances. So really, it's just it's really a way to stick it to consumers, right? If yourself as a company, especially as big as a company as Sony is, if you're having troubles, you could probably find a way to fix that internally without making the customer fit the bill for your woes, right? But that's how these multi-billion-dollar companies are. That's how they're like. They're like, oh well, this has gone down a percentage, so let's just up the price of certain things. And you're exactly right. I mean, the PlayStation 5 has been out for 2 years now. So it's older technology now, and it should be cheaper. That's how it's always been, is things get cheaper, right? They come out with newer, back in the old PlayStation days and stuff, they'd come out with smaller PlayStations and they were cheaper and stuff like that. And you could buy them, cheaper and because the supply and the way that they manufacture these different devices have gotten cheaper, and they can make them smaller and more efficient, but with less cost. And yeah, they're not putting anything new in these. They're not changing them in any way. It's the same exact console as it was before. They're just increasing the price. And we've never seen, we don't see this very often in this price increase for technology. And hopefully it doesn't become a trend, because that's just, I don't know. It's just stupid. It's like something that's already out on the market, especially for something like Oculus. We talked about that before. Oculus had been out on the market for I can't remember what we said. Like, it had already been out on the market, the Quest 2, for 5 years or something like that, or 6 years or something like that. So it was an old device, way past its prime. There are better VR headsets out there than the Oculus. And that just gives, even though it's still the cheaper option, that might make people decide just to go for a different VR headset. Why spend the money on that when I can just spend a little extra for something that's twice as good as the Oculus is, right? I mean, there's not the case for the PlayStation 5 or anything like that, but it might go the other way around, where people might end up picking up a Switch or picking up an Xbox instead, and it could hurt them in these other markets, possibly. Like I said, it's not a huge increase in price, but still it's an increase, and people don't like to pay more than they have to, especially when something costs less before, and now you're telling them that it's going to cost you more because, right? We're going to throw out things like inflation, or what's the buzzwords for the year? Oh, great. Let's just throw those out there. And then we'll just say, it was because of that. Right. So, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, Sony's been making a lot of anti-consumer moves, especially with the PlayStation 5. Right. The Xbox did it with the PlayStation 1, or the Xbox One. When it first came out, and Sony with the PlayStation 4 did really good consumer moves. Now it's switched. Microsoft's doing really good consumer practices, and Sony's not. They're doing a lot of anti-consumer practices, and they're not going to go. They're not going to go down or anything like that. But they might get a wake up call one day, right, where their consumers are kind of fed up with it. We all like our consoles and like gaming. We all own a PlayStation 5 and Xbox and Switch and all that stuff. We like playing on a variety of things, but we don't like to get screwed over, right? That's the thing. We might like these things, but we don't like to get screwed over by them. And if they're going to do wrong by the consumer, we're going to call them out for it. And for this, I think this is just a wrong move by Sony. I think they just saw that Oculus got away with it, so they figure, well, so can we. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think the reason they probably didn't do it in the US is, as Xbox still dominates the US market, I think they have like 53% of the console market in the US, whereas PlayStation's in the 43 to 46, I can't remember. And then Switch is like way the hell down there in the list of number of owners of the console in the US. Now, not purchases. I think PlayStation is still dominating the market right now this year. There was a point when in the US when Xbox and PlayStation first released where Xbox was selling more consoles in the US than PlayStation was, but that table has turned this year into starting late last year or something like that. The tables have flipped in PlayStation, but Xbox still has the majority of the US market. And I think that's why they didn't raise the rates here, because they figured they would just kill off that gain that they're getting on Microsoft here in the US market. At least according to Statista, the US has a higher market share of Xboxes than they do PlayStation consoles. Yeah, it's just, it is very anti-consumer. if they were dealing okay with a $500 console and now they're deciding, well, they're not, and they're going to raise the rates, what are your options? Buy it or don't buy it. That's pretty much your options. Is the $50 more worth it? You know, because it almost seems like, inflation is a two-way street, right? You're raising the rate of your console, but the buying power of your currency and inflation is at a lower amount too. So really, it may only be a 10% increase in the console, but it's more than a 10% increase when you factor in the inflation on the consumer. So that consumer's already typical items just for livelihood, like utilities and fuel and groceries and things like that have already gone up. Inflation's already kicked in on those, and people are paying more for those goods because the cost of food is always going to go up with inflation because that's how that stuff is governed. But electronics have typically done a downward spin. But we got a couple of these big dogs in the market that are bucking that trend and saying, not anymore. We're going to increase our costs this year. Even though it's nothing changed from last year, same console, same everything. Technology's gotten better, easier, quicker, but we're still going to raise the rates so we can recoup some more money from the people who didn't get in on the bottom floor, right? You didn't get in early, so now we're going to really stick it to you with a 10% increase. So not only are you getting hit with that those really high inflation rates, but you're also going to have to pay more if you want to play our console. Sony, they're going to, I don't think this is going to hurt them one bit, in my opinion. They're making lots of money. They dominate the world console market, and they will continue to do so until they price themselves out above Microsoft. And what I mean by that is if they start selling $600 and $700 consoles as the default, I think that may push more people away from them. That's just my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe these people who are diehard Sony fans will willingly to pay $700, $800, $900 for a console. Maybe I'm not willing to pay $900 for a console. I'm not willing to pay $700 for their console. I'm not even willing to pay $700 for Microsoft's console, for that matter.
Yeah, keep it at that $500 mark. That's the sweet spot for it. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. Yeah, I agree with you, though. It won't hurt them in the slightest. But, I mean, even if you are a huge fan of Sony, you've got to, and, regardless if you're a fan of Sony or a fan of Microsoft or a fan of Nintendo, when they do something wrong, you've got to have the courage to point at them and tell them that they're doing the wrong thing, right? Don't defend them on every little thing that they do, right? If they increase it, I don't want to see people defending, oh, well, it's a $50 increase, let me defend them. Don't defend them. All they're doing is taking more money from you and from other people, right? It's like a bully coming up to you is stealing your lunch money and you're telling the teacher that you're defending the bully, right? Like, oh, no, he needed that because whatever, or whatever the case may be, right? Any scenario where it's bad for you and you're trying to defend the other person, or the other thing, whatever that is, right? It's never a good thing. You got to be able to stand up and say, nah, you're doing something bad, and as gamers, we did that with Microsoft, right? And that's where Microsoft is now today. There today is that consumer friendly gaming developer that we know of the Xbox Series that people really tend to like. We can tell by sales stats and statistics that this is like, it's getting up there with like the 360 sales, right? People are really loving the series and loving the fact of Phil Spencer and his kind of pro consumer aspect outlook for consumers on the Microsoft side. And that's really working for them, right? But we went through a phase where Microsoft did a lot of things that were very anti-consumer, and they were called out for it pretty heavily. And, that's when they had to make a turn. And they did, and that was good for them. But, and so Sony might be getting that direction, right? They're starting to slowly turn that direction where we as gamers need to call them out on this type of stuff and say, hey, you can't take advantage of us.
Yeah. It seems like a weird move too, right? When we're just hitting multiple months back to back where video game sales and sales of video games are downward. They're going down. There's a slump. There's a whole big video games are hitting a recession, which I don't believe that they are or anything like that.
We talked about it last.
Yeah.
Check our videos. We talked about that.
Yeah. So, and it seems like a weird move to make in what everybody's calling a video game recession. I don't believe that. I just think that's because there's a lull in games that are coming out that are AAA titles, I should say. There's a lot of indie games and stuff like that we play and stuff like that. But what I would consider your mainstream gamers or majority gamers, they don't play a lot of like what we play. They're playing like the AAA titles, the stuff that's highly advertised. And there is not a lot of that this year or last year for that matter. But, with the new consoles helping to push older games that are getting re-released in freaking PS5 and Xbox X graphics, whatever, that's driving sales. But now there's nothing new that's helping to push that sales. So, video games are going to hit a little bit of a slump in sales because you can't reliably get a PlayStation 5. You can't reliably get an X. You can get an S pretty much just about anywhere. But most gamers that have been waiting this long don't want a damn S. They want an X or they want a PS5. And those are still not that easy to get. And so, that's going to be the downfall a little bit, is that you're in a little bit of a consumer spending slump with inflation and you're going to throw a price increase on top of it. I believe it will hurt their overall sales numbers, but it's a drop in the bucket to them. It's not like anything major, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. I'm not an economist or anything like that. I'm just a guy who's sitting in my armchair pointing out what I see.
Right? Aren't we all? Just pointing out what we see. Yeah, I agree. So we'll see. Yeah, it's going to be nothing for them, but for the consumer, it's going to be a big deal, right? Exactly, and that's the biggest problem for it. So, do you got anything else you want to add to this before we finish this up? All right. Well, let us know down in the comments. What do you think? Do you think that the $50 price increase for you as a consumer is no big deal, or do you feel like it's a kick in the teeth? Let us know down in the comments below. Also, again, if you have, go ahead and like the video if you haven't already. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell notification to stay updated with new videos that we do all the time. We'll see you next time.